Doing this for 40 years, is there a place you're like, this was my favorite spot ever?
That would be like me asking you, what is your favorite streaming service? About 51% of our business is cruises. There's actually some people, they buy a cabin and live on a ship.
I didn't even know that was a thing. We're going to get to all of that in a hot second, but first I want you to know the Ryan Leckey Show is sponsored by the Vanity Lounge in Pittston, PA, northeastern Pennsylvania's premier medical spa. Visit them at vanityloungenepa.com, and when booking your first appointment and service, use code Leckey to save 15%. I'm a huge fan of the owner, Tia. She takes care of this mug all the time, so check them out. Hey, friends. It's the Ryan Leckey Show. Welcome to the Ryan Leckey Show. Hey, what is going on, peeps? Leckey back at you with another episode of, yes, the Ryan Leckey Show. And somebody who I've known for so many years, you are literally the Swiss Army knife of all things travel. Eric Feerrar, the Vice President of Travel with AAA North Penn. Are you ready for this?
Thank you, Ryan, of course. And first of all, just thank you for inviting me. I mean, congratulations on your new business. I had a chance to meet your staff. What a team. And best wishes for a great
I really appreciate
venture.
that.
Yes,
I should probably
yes.
just tell people as well, you and I have known each other now about 15, 16 years.
Yeah,
Because in my last life, when I worked in television news, we did a ton of stories together and content. And I was like,
did.
this guy, not only a rock star on camera, so the pressure's on.
The pressure's on. Oh, my.
Not only somebody, but just the ins and outs. I mean, travel, you've been working in the travel industry now how many years?
I'm going on 40 years next year, Ryan.
40 years.
Yes.
You've been the Vice President of Travel for AAA North Penn, which is northeastern and central Pennsylvania, for how many years?
About 35 I've been doing it, yeah.
So the ins and outs. You were doing travel before there was all those little handy websites where people were trying to save a buck here or save a buck there. But
When I started, the agents were still handwriting airline tickets.
Wow,
There was a day when you actually had a book and you went through and you priced out an airline ticket. There was no computers. You didn't call anybody. You actually priced it out and you wrote it down and you handed somebody an airline ticket, and that's how they flew. Yeah.
And now look at it today. We just scan our phone, right?
You got it.
All right, so we have a lot to dive into because you, as somebody who's worked in the travel industry for 40 years, right? Things are consistently changing. You guys are on top of it all the time at AAA North Penn. And full disclosure, after I started my new chapter, we got to work together on some projects. But I always said to you, I was like, we got to do a podcast because of the travel hacks you have to offer and some of the insane stories that you got to share as well. So first, I want to kind of dive into this. I have a lot of notes, a lot of things we got to get to. Okay. So the state of the travel industry, right? So we think back, and there's always buzz about COVID. COVID relates to so much going on in our world, even in 2023, heading into 2024. Yep. Tell me what really shifted with the state of the travel industry post-COVID, because for a while, right, we couldn't do anything.
And I think the travel industry during COVID was one of the hardest hit industries. They didn't talk a lot about it because you had so many other things happening in the world, but we pretty much got shut down from traveling. I mean, we're a very mobile society, and for a year and a half to 2 years, it was tough just to go out of your house sometimes. And prior to COVID, 2019, I know at AAA, that was our largest sales year in travel. I mean, it was just exploding. People, our world is very small in terms of travel. We can get anywhere within a day now, and people just were going everywhere. And then COVID hit, and never thought I would see that in my life, that we couldn't travel anywhere. People couldn't get on a plane. They couldn't drive places. They couldn't leave the state without having notification to somebody or whatever. But, now in 2023, it looks to be probably a record-breaking year in the terms of travel. And 2024 is looking to exceed that. And sort of what you have happening is, during the years of COVID, you have everybody that sort of penned up demand. There was many people that had plans, obviously, through that time that had to pause them, postpone them, or cancel them. Now they're doing that travel, plus you have the normal travel coming on this year where people wanted to go. So you have that sort of double whammy effect of everybody wanting to travel. And so pretty much everybody wanting to travel that has the means to do it, they're traveling.
All right, so that leads me to the million-dollar question that a lot of people want to know. Where are the hottest spots, or where are the places people are going in 2023 and 2024?
The biggest thing by far is the cruise industry. I just checked before I came today. About 51% of our business is cruises. And in today's world, you can pretty much go anywhere in the world by a cruise. And they keep building new ships, and these are floating cities. There's so many options that people have. And for the value, it's probably one of the best vacation values out there because it's a floating hotel, so you stay on the ship. The food is included. They have specialty restaurants that for an extra fee you can go, but normal food is all included. They have world-class entertainment, Broadway shows, other type of comedians, dance groups, what have you. And then there's activities all day long. So it's just a huge, huge value for people.
So the boom is cruises.
The boom is cruises. That's where everybody's going right now as far as the biggest thing. Secondly, I'd say the Caribbean and Mexico as far as all-inclusive resorts.
Because we got to dive into that because there's always questions like, which inclusive resort do I choose? So I have to back up a second, though. Coming back to cruises.
Yes.
Right. I think there's also a misconception that people think like all cruise ships are the same, where they're just jam-packed with people and it's just, it's nonstop eating. It's not, and granted, like the food is a huge part of it. But I think what's amazing, because just talking to you, are the different levels of cruise ships and the different levels of packages. So you have a chance to be on a cruise ship with like a bazillion people, and maybe it's like kind of, it feels like Disney at sea, and then you have cruise ships that are like so scaled back where it's like 3 staff members per like one person, right? Tell me about that. Let's unpack some of those.
Sure. White glove service. You talk about how many years I've been in the industry. When I first started, back in the late 70s and 80s, the cruise industry was, the ships were very on customer friendly. Like every time you went from one area to another, you had to step over a little divot in the floor, and the doors were very awkward, and it was very formal. You had to have for dinner a suit and tie. The ladies had to wear a gown, and then they had ballroom dancing and everything. So it served a purpose for them, but as time went on, people wanted to experience it, but they wanted to be on vacation.
Well, first of all, I want to wear sweatpants if I'm eating all that food on the cruise. I don't want to wear a suit.
Of course. And as we work our way till today, it's very casual. There is no, if you can still, if you want to take a suit and tie, if you want to take a tuxedo, there are areas and nights that you can do that. But if you just want to wear the t-shirt, sweatpants, and just relax, you're on vacation, they understand that, and they make it very easy. But like you said, there are cruise ships out there where if you want to have a stateroom, your own dining room, and your own swimming pool, you can have that with a butler. You don't have to see anybody else on the ship if you choose not to.
Well, coming to that, what's like some of the maybe the lower tier price you could expect to pay versus like that?
Sure. Well, in a cruise ship, you'll find when you go to purchase a cruise, it can be overwhelming. You might have 16 different categories, and they range from on the very bottom of the ship to an inside cabin, to as you work your way up, they have a porthole, and then you get to a balcony, and then you get to suite, junior suites, presidential suites. And when you look at that, I always suggest, number one, start with a balcony. The nicest thing is on a cruise ship, when you wake up in the morning, open those French doors, you walk out, you're looking at the ocean, or at night you keep the door open. Just a great, great atmosphere. And then based on your budget, if you need to scale down a little, you can. You can go to a cabin that has a porthole, or you can go on the very bottom, has an inside with no lighting per se, or you can work your way up. And the junior suites and everything, as you get into pricing, again, it all depends where you're going. Obviously, it's different if you're going to a 7-day in the Caribbean off-season versus a European trip for 14 days. The price changes, but you can get cruises. What's nice is they set up itineraries out of the Northeast. It used to be you had to fly to Miami, you had to fly to Fort Lauderdale. Now you can go out of Bayonne, New Jersey, you can go out of New York, you can go out of Baltimore and do 7-9-day itineraries in the Caribbean. Plus you can go to Bermuda, you can go up to the Northeast. So that really makes it nice for people in our area, because an easy drive over and you're on a cruise ship and they're year round.
So it could be a couple grand too. I know there's some people out there who probably spend 6 figures.
Yeah, you can do 2 people, you could do it easily for a couple grand. You can go up towards 30 grand for, one of the a suite to have all the bells and whistles.
What's the most you've seen somebody pay for a cruise?
Well, they have round the world cruises, and they last about 90 days.
90 on a
90
cruise ship.
90 days on a cruise ship.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have members at AAA that book them. It's not an everyday thing, but I mean, people do that.
What does that cost?
That usually runs, again, it's based on your cabin. I would say anywhere from 90 to about 120,000.
Wow. 90 days at sea. That's insane.
There's actually some people that they're retired people, and they buy a cabin and live on a ship. Believe it or not, 12 months a year.
I didn't even know I didn't even know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm. They don't really promote that, but there's a hint, and they just, wherever the ship goes, obviously they're gone, and they live on the ship.
That is crazy. Mm-hmm. So you could do that. You can retire, sell your house, literally, and do you buy, or you basically just rent space on a cruise ship then?
Pretty much. I wouldn't say it's real common. I mean, they not every ship does it, but there are ships that do it. And yeah.
And if you want to know more, hit up the gang at AAA.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so we mentioned the all-inclusive resorts, right? Mm-hmm. Because you see some people have, and I've been there myself, right? You have a great experience at some places that are really beautiful and the food is awful. Mm-hmm. And then some people have been on inclusive vacations where they knock it out of the park. So for your advice, how do you pick an all-inclusive resort? Because I think there's always like, oh, this place has everything and this place is great, but the food's not so good. So how do you figure this all out?
You sort of need to look at yourself and the group you're traveling with or the person you're traveling with and just say, what are your likes? So if you're a foodie, if you're somebody that's the big thing.
Right here.
Right there. You want to go to the resort that has a lot of dining options. They might have 9 to 11 specialty restaurants, ranging from a Brazilian steakhouse to a Japanese hibachi to a French restaurant to a Caribbean. That way you can, pick and choose every night, have something different, and experience that. If you're somebody that likes a lot of excursions, you want every day, you want to be going here or there, you want to see architecture things, you want to get immersed in the culture, you want to do things. So you want to find an island or an area that has a lot of places to go. So in other words, you wouldn't want to go to Aruba because that's just more a smaller island that's beautiful beaches, but doesn't have a whole lot of excursions. On the flip side, but if you want excursions, you would like go to Mexico. You would go to Dominican Republic. Somebody wants to be golfing. Somebody wants to, again, explore Mayan ruins, those type of things. If you decide you're somebody that just wants to be, I want to hang out on a beach for 7 days, just soak up the sun, you want to find a place that has really nice beaches. Not all all-inclusive have the greatest beaches. So you want to look at that. So you want something that you can just go out, find your spot, nobody around you, and just enjoy that 7 days.
You mentioned Mexico, right? And there were some warnings back in the day, and I think things have maybe shifted, telling people from the United States not to travel there because it wasn't safe. How do you answer that question, as the VP of AAA North Penn?
Sure. A lot of people, and not just Mexico, but people will say to us, is it safe to go there? I mean, our number one answer is, I can't guarantee anybody's safety driving home from work tonight. But you just have to be cautious. And in terms of Mexico, where the resorts are, they're very safe when you're on the resorts. And, what we've seen is we've never had any issues with our members traveling to any of those places. There are definitely places in Mexico that we would advise you not to go. But when you go to the Yucatan Peninsula area, where Riviera Maya, Cancun, you are relatively safe at all the resorts because obviously they have high security. It's all gated, and we've not seen any issues from that standpoint.
Now, there's a lot of places to go, but speaking of when you mentioned places you would suggest not to travel, are there any places in the world that, due to violence, economic issues, that you would say, hey, maybe just pump the brakes on this place?
What we always tell people is the best resource is the State Department website because they list every country in the world, and they have a rating that will tell you about what level of concern about traveling there. So that changed. Obviously, as we speak right now, Russia, Ukraine, obviously, stay away from there. And when they have political unrest and, most of the places where we send our members and where they request, we're pretty safe with that. And it's just a matter of just using common sense, because it's not necessarily where you're going, but there's certain places, even in our own hometowns or in our areas, at night, there's certain places you just don't go, or you use a lot of common sense. And other things that we tell people is that, like when you're in Europe, one of the common things is pickpockets. And we just had one of a member that they were at an outdoor cafe. It was a lady, and she sat down in a chair and she put her pocketbook on the back of her chair. That's a huge no-no. And somebody just walked by, slipped it, and gone. Opposed to putting on your lap, and as a guy, your wallet, put in your front pocket. Or there's other things that you can get that you can put it underneath your jacket or whatever. And but again, I always tell people, go to the State Department if you're going to something off the beat place and you really have a reason to go there. Check it out. That's the best advice I can give anybody.
What's the safest place you found? Country, place, wherever?
The safest place, I would say, most tourist destinations that offer, really promote tourism, they're relatively safe. I would say one of the safest places I found was Ireland. I mean, not that I felt unsafe. I've been very fortunate. I've traveled all through Europe, South America, Central America. I mean, to me, it's not uncommon going through security and there's somebody with a machine gun standing there looking at you and everything. Yeah. But that's just how other countries do their security and everything.
Well, doing this for 40 years, is there a place you're like, this was my favorite spot ever?
That that would be like me asking you, what is your favorite streaming service? I mean, that's tough. But if I had to break it down, I would break it into 3 answers. In terms of people, I've been just very fortunate in those years. Like I said, I've traveled extensively throughout Europe, been in South America, Central America, been on, I can't tell you how many cruises through the Caribbean, through Canada, Alaska. I would say from a people standpoint, Ireland, the nicest people
I got to ask you that, because I am running into my neighbors. I see everybody post stuff on social media about Ireland. I'm like, is everyone in Ireland and I'm the only one here like still working, right? Where's this boom coming from? Like, I'm literally seeing what you just said. I was visiting some of your team members the other day, right? There was a group trip going to Ireland, but I'm just saying, even people I haven't talked to while I went to high school with or whatever, sure. Everybody's going to Ireland. What's the deal?
Just, again, a lot to see and do, a lot of history, but the people are so welcoming.
Yeah.
You could be walking down the street and somebody sees you, ask them a question, come on in, let me show you something, and they'll take you in their house. I mean, the nicest thing. And there's a pub on every corner, which helps that too, everybody. But again, in terms of just people, second answer is, what's the best place I've been to? And it's tough, but the answer I would say this is the best kept secret in Europe, is Prague. I love Prague. My wife and I've been very fortunate. My wife travels with me most of the time.
Why Prague?
She loves it too. Why Prague? It's a very metropolitan city, but it's an old city. So you sort of see the remnants. It used to be Czechoslovakia, but now it's Czech Republic. So you see a lot of history in there. They have every type of food cuisine you can think of, and it's very well priced. Huge. So the foodie that you are, you would love that. Again, people are very nice. Shopping is great. European, if you're going for shopping, and again, I'm talking something way out of my league, but my wife, we could do a whole nother podcast on her shopping. But there's just so many options, and it's very well priced. When you get into places like in France and Italy, from a shopping perspective, the top line stores just very, very expensive. But for whatever reason, they keep the prices very, very reasonable in Prague. So a lot of people fly over and do their Christmas shopping, believe it or not, in America, in Prague, and go back home.
Get out. So if you're talking like, what kind of, if your wife's into like shopping, right, you have to know some of these brands. Are we talking like Louis Vuitton, Gucci?
Louis Vuitton, Bang. Oh, yeah.
Buy it in Prague?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of overseas trip, this is a question I think I even ran into, and I know other people who might, travel overseas. Right. Let's talk about exchanging money.
Sure.
What are your pro tips? Because sometimes I've seen so much buzz, like, don't do it at the airport. You get all these charges. Like, where should you exchange money, do you do it before you leave the United States, or do you do it when you get to your destination?
No, very good question. Number one is pretty much any normal travel destination that is promoting tourism, you can use your credit card. Credit cards accepted anywhere. And we always say that should be your number one thinking if you're going to make purchases. And again, depending on what type of trip that you're taking, a lot of stuff is already included. It's like your meals are included, your hotels are prepaid. If you have a rental car, that's prepaid. So you don't need a ton of money. But if you're going where maybe you're purchasing wine and having it shipped back, or you're looking to purchase a lot of other things, it's good to have cash with you, because especially like in Europe, they have a lot of open air markets, or they have, I hate to use this word, but what we call flea markets. But you can buy a lot of neat stuff there, and they're not set up that you just swipe your credit card. So to answer your question, yes, you should always take the currency of where you're going. Working for AAA, we're one of the few places that sell that. So you can order that. You can, within like a 3-day time period, you can order the currency that you want, and we will tell you every day we know the exchange rate of whatever you may be getting. At the very least, you want tip money. So I always tell people, just have tip money. And a lot of places, if you're going to the restroom, sometimes you have to pay €1 or, and have some of that in your pocket. And then if you want to get,
I'm sure some people will be relieved to know you said that.
Ooh,
Shared that little tip, because I didn't know that.
Yes, that is true.
Because sometimes when you got to go, you're like, just take my money.
Yes, and here's a 20. I don't care, right? Yeah. But,
all right, well, that's good to know.
yeah.
So the bottom line is, if you say you didn't do it through a travel agency, do it when you get to the destination, or would you do it at the airport before?
I
you
would
leave?
do it at the airport before. So in other words, like I said, you can get the currency here. At AAA, we sell that.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people coming in for that. One thing I'd always want to point out, because what happens is people, they buy it, they go, they come back, and they don't use it all, and they bring it back home. Very few, you can't really find a place that'll convert it back, so people get stuck with it and until they go again. So what you want to do is, if you're coming back, exchange it at the airport on the way back, so you get back into dollars. Very important, because a lot of people don't realize that, and they're sitting on €200 and like, what am I supposed to do with this?
So do it at the
airport on the return. You can either do it, most likely it's easiest to do it at the destination on the return, because when you get back into like JFK or Newark or whatever, you're wanting to get home. You don't want to be looking for an exchange place and everything. So
got it.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about Ireland, right? And I told you, I'm like, everyone's going to Ireland. My neighbors go to Ireland.
Yes.
But there's also, I don't know if it's on the comeback or maybe it's always been there and I just didn't hear about it enough, the group trips. What's with the group trips? Because I just, some of my neighbors are loving these group trips. Some of them book through you guys as well.
Sure.
And then especially when they experience like flight changes or cancellations, they said like how great it was to be on a group trip versus by themselves, and working with a travel agent, right, that had their back, like at AAA.
Yep.
But why this uptick in group trips?
Sure.
What's the benefit of a group trip or going on a cruise as a group versus not?
Great question. That's probably the fastest growing department in a travel agency is our group department. We have a staff of 4 people. All they do is set up groups for people. And when I say groups, it could be a church group, a family group, a destination wedding. We do stuff for local colleges and universities, sending people. And then we just set up trips ourselves. Like we might set up, in a given year, we probably set up about 150 trips. And they range from a 1-day bus trip, maybe to New York City or to a sporting event, up to a 3-week Alaska trip. And a lot of people, all their lives, they worked hard and they have sort of a bucket list trip or they want to go there, but they don't necessarily want to do it alone. They want to have a peace of mind or a worry-free vacation, knowing that if I'm traveling somewhere in Europe or I'm going up to Alaska and I'm transferring from a train to a ship to a plane, I don't know how to do that. I want to go with people that maybe from the area that I live in, or if it happens to be, from a church or an organization, people that they hang out with. But what we do is we package this all together, and we also send hosts along from AAA, and that person goes along with you and just make sure everything is worry-free for you. And I'll give you
I'm smiling, by the way, because you said hosts go along, but back in the day in the travel industry in general, it wasn't just a AAA thing. Do you remember what hosts were called?
Escorts.
Escorts.
Yeah, we changed that a little.
I
We
like
got-
a relative. I don't know. It was like eons ago, and she's like, "I'm an escort," and I'm like, "Okay, I wouldn't be bragging about that." Oh, that kind of escort. Okay, got it.
Yes,
So
yes.
you put host as part of these trips, and what do they do as part of a host on a group trip? And what is the group? How does the group benefit from this? Are these people being like, "Hey, we're gonna eat here tonight"? Like you take the thinking out of it?
Pretty much. Example would be going through an airport. Just a lot of people with kiosks now. I mean, as simple as that sounds, it can be overwhelming if you're not used to that, and you have to put your passport in, and you have to put. They help you get through that. When you get transferred from, say, a bus to the hotel, they make sure everything is prearranged. When you go in, everything's set up for you. They just hand you the keys. Boom, you go to your room. Double check on dinner reservations. If there is a problem, in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of issues with the airlines, and the airlines, they took it hard through the pandemic. And coming out of the pandemic, they just, staffing issues, pilot issues. There's a lot of things that negatively affected the airlines, and cancellations, delays are normal. So the host intercedes there to make sure everybody understands if they have to rebook. They're working back with our office to reschedule things. Example I can tell you was we had a couple years back, we had a large radio group of about 80 people, and it was in January, and they're coming back from a great 7-day, I think it was an Eastern Caribbean cruise, and there was a bad snowstorm in the Northeast. You remember the days when you covered all those bad weather storms?
Oh, yeah.
And as the last couple days were approaching, it was looking like the storm was going to hit the day they were to return. So it turned out that Newark, Philly, everything was shut down for almost a day and a half. So the fact that we're on a group, we saw that our group department sort of took action. When the group arrived in Miami, we already had a resort booked for 2 nights. We had bus transportation set up. We had, again, the host was sort of working with everybody, letting them know. The majority of the people that lived in the Northeast, they were stranded at the airport, or they had to find their own way to get to a hotel. They had to pay it. We had it all set. Didn't cost anybody anything.
How do you do that?
We have insurance that covers that.
And we're going to come to that because I have a lot of questions about travel insurance. Worth it, not worth it. We'll get back to that. But go ahead. So you basically had people who could have been stuck at, say, the Miami airport, right? You guys end up booking them a resort. You're like, hey, you're going to stay here 2 more days.
They had 2 more nights of just their food was included. They had just a fantastic time to end the trip, opposed to a frustrating sitting in an airport.
Trying to scream at somebody to get a flight.
Yeah.
That you see all this stuff play out on the news. Yeah,
exactly.
wow. So coming back to what we said, travel insurance, right? Because
Yes.
some people, look, we've all been guilty. You're searching websites. You're looking for the best deal.
Yep.
Right? When should you get travel insurance?
Okay.
And what point do you say, you don't need it?
That's the biggest takeaway that I could say today on the podcast would be, if you're traveling, especially if you're going outside the country, without a doubt, purchase travel insurance. And I know, people say, oh, I don't need that, I'm going. It covers many more things. You might have a family member might have a health issue that you don't want to leave. But if you don't get your money back, your insurance will cover that. Traveling abroad, I mean, we have people slip, fall, break arms, legs. And sometimes when you're in another country, your medical card, you just don't show that to them, and that covers it. Right. You have to pay, with your credit card or whatever. A lot of times, the insurance covers that for you. Plus, they have interpreters, where if you're in a hospital, they don't speak English. They can help you interpret, get through.
This is a lot of stuff people don't think about.
They never think about this, but they're, and sort of a sad statistic, but a lot of travelers, prior to the pandemic, it was about 20,000 Americans when they travel abroad die. And it just and I hate to even say that, but I mean, it's just fact of life. I mean, when things happen, people have heart attacks, they have other things, and
so what happens in that situation? So say somebody travels with their loved one, they
Yes.
go wherever, right? And their loved one, maybe like you said, dies of the unthinkable, a massive heart attack or something else. how do people get their loved one back, or like, and how does insurance play a role with that? Because that's crazy when you think like 20,000 people. You said, is it a year or is it just since the pandemic that's
A
happened?
year.
A year who will travel. Something
Yep.
happens, the unthinkable to their spouse, right?
Of course, yeah.
Like, what do you do in that situation?
Well, if you have insurance, they take over. So they work with the local, depending where you're at, funeral home. They make the arrangements. There's special arrangements that you can do with airlines to get the deceased back to wherever they need to go. If you didn't have that, I know of people that had to mortgage their house in order to. It's very expensive, depending where you're at. You could be talking tens of thousands of dollars to have all the procedures that necessarily need to be taken.
To bring your loved one back overseas if they passed away over there on
Correct.
vacation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, traveling overseas, get the insurance. At what point if people, because I know sometimes people are like, I'm going to save money. I'm healthy. I'm good.
Yeah.
If you're traveling domestically, do you need it?
Again, we often say that yes, and the way insurance works is it's all the price of insurance is based on the cost of the trip that you're going on and your age. So I definitely would say if you're flying somewhere, things can happen, and we see a lot. People come back early on trips because there might be a reason they have to get back. A loved one back home had some health issue. They have to be back quickly. And, just making all those arrangements to buy an airline ticket, same day notice, you lose half the trip, you don't get your money back or anything, that would cover it. So the other key thing, too, with insurance is you want to buy it at the time you put the deposit down. A lot of people don't realize this because if you purchase the insurance at the time you make your deposit on the trip, any pre-existing conditions are waived. So in other words, if you don't do that and say, a month before you decide, I'm going to buy insurance, and say, I'm trying to think of a medical issue that might, say you have high blood pressure, and say something, the day before the trip, you have an issue where your doctor says you can't travel because your blood pressure is a certain level. The fact that you were being treated for that blood pressure at the time you purchased it, the insurance doesn't cover, so you won't get your money back. But if you would have purchased that insurance at the time of the deposit, that would have been waived. So it's always important when you make that decision to do it at the time that you're putting your deposit down.
Now, do you think in the day and age, right, people love to book stuff from their phone, right? Whether it's like Airbnb or, going on all these travel apps.
Right.
When the internet, right, had a huge boom and apps just continued to grow over the years, how did that impact that one-on-one interaction that people would experience, say, with a travel agent at AAA? And have you seen a shift where people now are realizing, you know what, I'd rather just work with the person who has my back than technology? Tell me about, like, sort of the flip side of everything.
Of course. The biggest answer I can give you to that is the pandemic is a perfect example of that because the day when they declared, I think it started out as a 15-day pause. You remember back to that? Everything was to be shut down for 2 weeks, and then everything would come back to normal. We all sort of believed that.
And it was like more than a year.
Yeah. But at that point in time, we had 5,000 of our members that had reservations into the future. And they were anything from airline tickets to a bus trip to trips to Europe, cruises, I mean, it was just across the board. And everybody all of a sudden realized, oh my goodness, I'm not traveling. Even if they said you could travel, I don't want to travel. We went to work immediately. And I'm sort of pushing the fact of working with a travel agent. Even though, we were shut down, all of our agents worked remotely. And we quickly had our IT department sort of connect everybody from home. We did a system with cell phones and talking to our members so they could transfer calls around. And I'm just proud to say that none of our members lost a penny. But you go to the internet, you can just type in and just say pandemic issues with travel reservations. A lot of them went out of business. A lot of them, when you called, they said you need to call the vendor. So if you booked a Carnival cruise, they said, well, you need to call Carnival or whatever. They weren't there to help you. They weren't there to get you through the problems. And Not to say, there are many. You can type in the word cruises, and you'll get pages and pages of places that you can book a cruise. But who you're working with, and what.
And can you pick up the phone and call that person?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you feel like now, especially after the pandemic, right? People are seeing the value of working one-on-one with a travel agent.
We're seeing it, so as it started, pretty much the first quarter of last year is when things sort of like the mask mandate got taken away. A lot of COVID restrictions started being lifted probably around June. And, people just weren't sure, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I can book a trip, but I don't really, do I need to get tested? Do I need to? They saw the value of coming to an agent and being able to ask questions. And we, obviously this is what we do all day long. So we had the answers for them. And if they didn't have testing, here's where, here's what you need to do and everything.
You know what's crazy? We're sitting here talking. Everything we've talked about so far relates to travel. I'm looking at the logo on your shirt. I think a lot of people just got still, depending on their age, right? Just think AAA is like automotive related. Tell me about the shift with AAA in general, right? Because I think a lot of people, look, I have a AAA card, right? People are like, how do you change a flat tire? I'm like, I call AAA. The shift with roadside to like expand to travel, because a lot of people just thought like AAA is for automotive.
Without a doubt. I would say if you would talk to 10 of your friends and you say the word, when you hear the word AAA, what do you think of? The number 9 out of 10 people would say, oh, they're if my car breaks down, that's who I call. And of course, that's our number one service. That's why people join. But as time went on, that's all people that travel. I mean, they travel. So we've expanded, into the travel services years and years ago. But we have a great relationship with our cruise vendors, our tour vendors, and our members get special benefits. And sort of, back to what you're saying with the internet, a lot of people think, well, if I book it with the internet, I'll get a better price. That's not the case at all.
Do you guys price match?
We do. We do. And
I had to ask because now every store you go into, right? Like, we'll price match. And I've shopped at, I'll say, big box stores, right? And you'll show like, oh, I found this price online, and they're matching it.
We do. The one thing that when I sort of hesitate, and the only reason I hesitate, a good example would be, a lot of times you can go on the internet and you can book an all-inclusive resort. So you can maybe, we'll say, Punta Cana down in the Dominican Republic. Someone will come in and say, well, I got this price. So we look at it and say, okay, tell me about the airline ticket you get. Is it a direct flight or is it a double connection? We look at that. When you get to the airport, did it include the transfer to get you from the airport to the resort? Then they say, well, no. So, we have to say, we're not really matching what the trip should be. So when you come to us, we give you a price on the entire trip that you're paying. So many people, and that's one of the biggest things, they'll book something, but it doesn't include all the necessary components of the trip. Transfers is the big thing for all-inclusive. People book a Mexico trip, but they get to the airport and like, or they'll have to, buy a taxi or an Uber or something of that nature. And, we don't recommend that. It sort of goes back to the safety thing. We like to know who we're dealing with, and we look at the transportation companies and everything, and that's who we book our stuff with. We just don't randomly just pick somebody outside the airport and that's who you want to jump in the car with.
I think the thing is, working with you on different projects, like over the past 15 years, what I'm always amazed by, I've seen a lot of the same team members you've had. You've had people work at AAA for 40 years for you.
50.
20 years, 30 years, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think, what makes it so different than some other mom and pop travel agencies? Because you have people there who've been there forever. They know this stuff inside and out. And you have like the person who's really good at Disney and the person who's really good at resorts, right? You have all these pros.
Exactly.
And they don't leave.
They don't leave. No. The longevity, like you said, you hit it on the head. I mean, we just had somebody retire that was with us 50 years. Wow. We had another lady that was with us 55 years, retired right before the pandemic. But I would say the biggest thing about AAA is we treat everybody like members, not clients. And I know that sounds odd, but when you go to the internet, you're a client. And sort of what I said, if there's a problem, they don't really, sometimes there's nobody you can call. They're not going to solve it for you. They booked it. It's up to you to call the airline to resolve it or call the vendor. you're our member. Once you book with us, we are there from the beginning to the end, and we treat you like a member. So,
it's almost like the travel agent goes with you.
In a way.
I remember I went to an all-inclusive wedding one time, and we ended up using you guys at AAA versus, I don't know, whoever the agent was, the bride had from some other company. And it's like we didn't have to think. I love it. And I remember, like, the travel agent, Stephanie was her name, calling me and checking in, and it felt like, I'm like, this girl's like on vacation with me. And just knew the resort inside and out, scheduled everything. I didn't have to think.
Yeah. That's our agents. I mean, they just love working with people. I mean, they're just special people, and that's the backbone of what we do at AAA. But, they want to make sure that you have a memory, you have a worry-free vacation. And I said, being the fact that you're members and not customers or clients. So, like I always say, are you a client of your church? No, you're a member of your church. And that's, it's a different way of how you get treated.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have the number of how many places you visited, countries?
I do not. Like I said, I've never added it up, but I would say probably 50 some countries, I would guess.
Is there a place you haven't been yet that you're like, I got to go here?
An area of the world that, I haven't really, has been Asia. I haven't really hit that hard just because that's not a huge market for us. And I've always wanted to do that. So that's probably if I would look at my own bucket list, but I want to start hitting there's phenomenal places. We had one of our agents went to Vietnam right before the pandemic, and they said it was a great experience. Yeah. But there's a lot of neat places.
People who might see this, are you guys hiring?
Is
it a tough gig to get into? I
would say,
because I think people like the perks, right? You
everybody looks at it like, oh my gosh, yeah. Every week you're probably getting on a plane going somewhere. Now, I'm doing budgets, I'm doing marketing plans, I'm doing the contracts with cruise lines, airlines. But no, it is the neatest thing though is watching people, the memories that they make. And, I always say to people that the neat thing about travel is that it creates a lasting memory. Because you can say to somebody like, I'll say to you like, Ryan, do you remember like last year, what'd you get for Christmas? And you can probably rattle off to me, yeah, I got this. And if I said, what'd you get 2 years ago? And you'd probably maybe think a little bit. If I said 3 years ago, what'd you get you'd probably like, I don't know. If I say, you remember that wedding, or if I say, you went on a trip somewhere 10 years ago, you could probably give me every aspect of that trip and just intimate details of just
you're
crazy
right.
Yeah. And that's the neat thing about travel, and we just make memories. And I think that's one key denominator with all of our agents is they just love the fact that they can just make these memories with their members, and they keep coming back.
We talked about a lot of like places like overseas and travel, but are there any hot spots in the U.S., like popular spots, I should say, that you're sending some of your AAA members that you're like, you got to see this hidden gem in America?
Well, a couple of them. I would say people are having a resurgence for national parks. We are just seeing a ton of people going out all throughout, well, where the parks are, but people love that. They're going out, seeing that. Nashville is huge.
Yeah, Nashville big.
Is huge. We're seeing a lot.
I went to Nashville and I booked a trip through you guys. This is like years ago.
Yeah,
it was super fun.
Yeah, we're seeing like bachelorette parties, a lot of people going there. But I mean, it's something for everybody. And what I just see, the Nashville is supposed to like double in size in the next 10 years or something.
Wow.
I mean, that's a big place. Your Florida market is always big. I mean, you got your Disney, Universal Studios, all the things down there. People are still going there. Shore points, from a drive perspective, people are doing a lot of, shore points. A lot around the country, people come in and get triptychs, and they'll take a month, and they'll take a northern route and come down the southern route.
What's triptychs, if people aren't familiar with it?
Okay, that's
how does it work? You got to simplify it.
I know. In today's world, we all have GPSs, so we don't. But a lot of people still like to have something they can have in their hand. That
I have somebody on my team. He loves paper maps.
Yeah.
Even though he has a GPS, wants the paper map, wants to plan out the trip.
They still like that, just to have that as a backup. And also, sometimes, you can open a map up and see a wide range, where if you're just looking at your phone, you can't necessarily see a big geographic area. So a lot of people.
So triptychs is?
Triptychs is it's a printout of where you're going. So you can, if you're doing it like around the country type of a trip, it might take 10 pages, but it's a flip over type thing. And you can see a little yellow line takes the route you're going, the exits you're going, points out all the rest areas and things that as a traveler would need to know.
Yeah.
Going through there. So back in the day when I started, that was probably one of the top things we did. They're not as popular as it used to be, and we've sort of changed the method. It's more online now. We print it out. It gets printed out on our.
I'm a big fan of the app though too, especially when you get a flat tire. So good.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think nowadays people want to feel if they're spending any kind of money on a vacation, right? The internet could be great. You might find a bargain there, but I think it's a lot of the stuff you mentioned people don't think about. Okay, you found this all-inclusive in Mexico. How are you getting to the resort?
Yep.
Right? What are you going to do if your flights are canceled on the way back, right? You're going to be one of those people standing in the airport, or you're going to go back to the resort and have somebody handle the rest for you and not have to think.
Exactly.
That's where I want to be, right?
Exactly.
It's crazy. So I think that's where I feel the relationships with people matter. And I know some of the people you guys have, as you said, they're working 50 years, 30 years. You know, my neighbors have worked with some of the same travel agents forever.
Of course.
And
they know their families. They know their kids' names.
Yeah, the grandkids. And I think there's a comfort level there.
Without a doubt.
Is there any other thing that you think people don't know about when it comes to just the travel industry in general?
Yeah.
Or any hacks that you're like, pay attention to this?
I would say the one thing that I've noticed that is Americans view their passport differently than people around the world. If you go to anybody like in Europe, they know where their passport. They're not traveling. They just have their passport like in their home safe, or they have it it's in the sock drawer. Or they and when they're traveling, they sort of aren't overly worried about it. But also with that, what we're finding is a week doesn't go by where we have members that booked a trip and they're panicking because they renewed their passport and it hasn't come back yet. And because of the surge of travel, there's a demand to get passports. And through the pandemic, a lot of people sort of lost track of when their passport was expiring. So, they come in, they book a trip, and, we always remind them about that. Oh, yeah, I'm good. A month before the trip, they go get it, and like, oh, my goodness. One thing you have to realize is your passport has to be valid 6 months after you return from your trip, or you can't use it. A lot of people don't realize that. So it has to be valid 6 months after the return of your trip. So we always tell people.
To get home, you mean?
To get home.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people don't realize that.
People think it's the expiration date, and as long as you make it before that.
Nope, it's 6 months after.
So say you're in Paris, and if your passport's expiring, say, in a week, you're not going to get out of there.
Well, they would know that before you got on the plane in America.
Got it.
You would not get on that plane.
So you need at least 6 months after that.
Yeah.
All right. And your professional advice, if someone's like, yep, I need to get my passport for that upcoming overseas trip, how long should you allow for that passport to get to you?
Right now, as we speak, so if you decided you want to renew your passport, it's taking anywhere from probably 10 to 13 weeks to get it processed. And that doesn't count the time mailing it to the processing center and getting it back. So you could be 15 weeks out before you get your passport.
And that's if you don't do the expedited.
If you expedite it, you can save. That changes that equation to probably 7 to 9 weeks.
Wow.
If you expedite it.
But still,
if you're within 2 months, you got an issue. And if you're within 2 months, your options are very limited. There are, beyond the expedited means that they're just Federal Expressing things back and forth. But if you truly want to get it expedited, I mean, you can pay anywhere from $300 to $700 and get it back into 2 weeks. A lot of people, and if you combine that with 2 people, I mean, now that becomes real money. Or your other option is you can actually, within 2 weeks, you can go to a passport processing center. Most people in our area go to Philadelphia, but you can do it same day. It's a pain. You have to set an appointment. You have to get there early in the morning. You have to make sure you have all the paperwork is done. You have to have your passport photo. You have to have your old passport. And you go in the morning, and then you meet with an agent. Then you have to wait till the afternoon until it's done. So it's an all-day process, but you can do it that way. So the biggest thing I can say is, even if you're not planning on traveling right now, they're good for 10 years. Get your passport renewed. Get it renewed today.
Don't be that person being like, 2 months till my trip. You're never going to get your passport.
Don't do it. Another thing, too, while we're talking about that is, you've probably heard of real ID. And that actually was something that started.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big thing here in a couple of years.
Because they kept bumping it during the pandemic, right?
Well, way before the pandemic. Okay. That actually started, Congress passed that law back in, I think, 2004. It was a result of 9/11. And it basically was trying to get every state to have like a uniform driver's license that when they go through a security, they know it's who it is. And there was 8 states that sort of, for a variety of reasons, didn't get it up and running. They kept getting exemptions. Pennsylvania was one of them. But it's May of 2025 is the drop dead date now. And everything I've been hearing is it's not going to get extended. So basically what happens there is, like, traveling domestically, most Americans don't use their passport to travel domestically.
Right.
They use their driver's license. If you don't have the real ID after that date in May of 2025, you cannot get on a plane. And we've been trying to alert our members in that, but as we get closer to that, that's something that we're really going to try to sound the alarm on. But again, I would recommend don't wait until 2 weeks before, or God forbid you have an emergency that you have to fly somewhere to, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't get on the plane. Do it now. It's $30, and you have to go through. There's a little process to do it, but you can go to the local,
DMV,
right? and get.
And there's a lot of information too on the state's website with that.
And another thing too, just along those lines, if you're somebody looking to travel to Europe, Europe just came out, the European Council, I guess, whatever, but they're going to start having visas for Americans. If you're American traveling to Europe, you have to get a visa now. And initially it was set up for 2024, so everybody was sort of nervous about like what's that going to entail. They pushed it back till 2025, but I'm just sort of putting that on the radar for people. That something, it sounds like it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be an online type thing. My understanding is it'll be like $10, but you just have to fill it out ahead of time. But starting in 2025, you will have to get a visa to go to Europe.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of info. I love it. Hey, before I let you go, too, I think I want to clear up, maybe there's a misconception, too, why people maybe don't work one-on-one with the travel agent.
Yep.
Do they charge you a ton more money because you're working with the real person? Like, do you ever get that? Do people say, like, oh, what am I going to get? A couple extra $100 fee slapped on me because I'm working with the person instead of booking it right on the internet?
Great question. And again, a lot of people think that I can go to the internet and, I can get a better price. Not for any vacation package. I have not seen that. And again, apples to apples. We do not charge any fee for our services. Like with airline tickets, we charge a fee. But in terms of just working with an agent, you can come in, you can sit down for an hour and get quotes for anywhere. You can walk away. We don't charge you for that at all.
And do you have to be a member of AAA to utilize that service?
You don't have to be a member. We strongly advise it, though. I mean, I don't know the percentage, but probably 98% of who we deal with are members. It's just a good thing. And just a quick thing about being a member, you talked about earlier, other than road service, there are so many things. We have a discount reward program.
Yeah, tons of discounts.
And we deal, just to give you an example, like we deal with Hertz, we deal with Penske Automotive. Locally, there's some local places for tires and that the average AAA member, if you just use it for normal purchases, hotel discounts, rental car, you can save about $110 a year. That's what the average AAA member saves by using their AAA card. So it's a good thing. It's not just for road service.
Yeah, but that's good to know too about just the lack of fee. You don't have to pay a fee to work with the travel agent. You come in there, get quotes, and be like, okay, peace out. I'm going to think about this.
You got it.
Got it. Any other final thoughts just about travel in general for 2023, 2024? Any places you want to tell people, hey, here's a little tip, 2024, you might want to go here. It's going to be hot.
I would say the biggest tip I can say to anybody is book early. They're coming out of the pandemic. There was just a lot of options. There was a lot of availability. It's so big up into 2024. The availability is just going. So book early, buy insurance. That's the 2 things I could say to you.
Eric Feerrar, the VP of travel for AAA North Penn. Thanks so much. I can't believe you've been doing this 40 years.
40 years, yeah.
When did you start? When you were 10?
You got it. How about it? Thank you.
Can I get a free cruise now? Just kidding. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks
you so much for joining us. I learned a lot from you. And I've known you for, 15, 16 years and some of this stuff. This is great.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.
Ryan.
And thank you for being a part of the Ryan Leckey Show. See you next time.